Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today I will analyze the case of Jason Steiner. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the incident, then offer my analysis. Jason Robert Steiner was born on June 30, 1990, and lived in Gresham, Oregon. This is 16 miles east of Portland. He worked for a marijuana dispensary for a while until he ran into difficulties. On December 15, 2021, he was fired from the store. Jason drove his pickup truck in reverse into a pickup truck owned by the manager who just fired him. He then ran his truck into an unmarked police patrol vehicle. On May 9, 2023, Jason renewed his permit to work in a marijuana dispensary in the state of Oregon. 13 days later, on May 22, 2023, Jason pleaded guilty for the 2021 truck ramming incident. He pleaded guilty to misdemeanor hit and run, unlawful use of a vehicle as a weapon, reckless driving, and first-degree criminal mischief. His sentence was 3 years of probation and anger management classes. Jason went to work at the La Mota marijuana dispensary at the intersection of North St. Louis Avenue and North Seneca Street in Portland. The store was in a 1,500 square foot single-story building. There was only one door to the building, which faced North Seneca Street. There was also a small drive-up window on the southeast wall of the structure. The business had been robbed 4 times since 2022, probably because marijuana dispensaries are known for having a lot of cash. Now moving to the timeline of the incident. On October 3, 2024, at 9:39 p.m., Jason Steiner called 911 and indicated he was at the La Mota. He said, "I had 3 people try to rob me. I shot 3 of them." Jason was hiding in bushes near the store. The police arrived 9 minutes later. Inside the store, they found 2 men who had been shot. An 18-year-old man named King Lawrence was dead from a gunshot wound to his head, and a 20-year-old man named Tahir Burley was severely wounded. He soon died from 2 gunshot wounds to his chest. As the police pulled Tahir from the building to render medical aid, they found a firearm next to him. Open duffel bags containing merchandise were found on the floor, and the perpetrators had parked a getaway vehicle not far from the store. Outside the building, next to the drive-up window, the police found 13 spent cases. On a nearby sidewalk, the police encountered Jason Steiner. He gave them a firearm and an empty magazine. Here is the story that Jason supplied to the police. That night, he was working alone in the store. When he was in the back room, Jason heard people enter the dispensary. When he walked out, he saw 3 men with firearms pointed at him. Jason was afraid for his life and told the men to take the store. Just take the store. He grabbed a bag containing a firearm from the back room and told the men he was leaving. The men did not try to stop him. As Jason was exiting the store, he heard one of the men say something like, "What does he have on him?" Jason assumed this was in reference to him, which is the logical conclusion. After he made it outside the building, he retrieved his gun, cycled the action to chamber a round, and positioned himself by the door. Jason was waiting for the men to come out. Again, there was only one door to the store, so he knew the men would have to use that door to exit. Jason waited, but no one exited, so he went around the corner of the building to the drive-up window and looked inside. He saw the perpetrators, who appeared to be oblivious to his presence. One of the men had a pistol in his hand in a low-ready position. Jason believed this was his chance. He pointed his pistol and fired inside the building 13 times, emptying the magazine of his weapon. At this point, he walked to the sidewalk and called 911. The police asked Jason why he didn't leave the area and instead chose to return and shoot the perpetrators. Jason explained that because he was a large man, he could not escape from the 3 men if they decided to come after him. Furthermore, the keys to his vehicle were inside the store. He worried that the men might get his vehicle and hunt him down. The police reviewed video surveillance from the dispensary. The video captured 3 perpetrators approach the building together, enter through the door, and proceed behind the counter to the back room where Jason was. Jason exited the room, and 2 of the men pointed firearms at him. He grabbed a bag from inside the back room, walked past the perpetrators, and exited the store. Once outside the store, Jason walked toward North St. Louis Avenue, around the corner of the store, and went out of view of the door. He was on the sidewalk next to North St. Louis Avenue. 2 of the perpetrators started loading duffel bags with merchandise while the third perpetrator watched through the cracked door as Jason walked away. Once Jason went around the corner of the building, the third perpetrator closed the door and joined the other two, loading merchandise into duffel bags. Jason could be seen retrieving his pistol and chambering a round. He walked back toward the door of the building. However, he did not stop at the door, as he had told the police. Instead, he walked past it and made his way to the drive-up window. When he started shooting at the perpetrators, their backs were turned toward him, and none of them had a firearm in their hand. Again, Jason stated that one of them had a pistol in a low-ready position. King Lawrence was struck and fell to the floor almost immediately. Despite being struck multiple times, Tahir Burley managed to get away from the window and draw his firearm. He stopped moving right after this. The third man moved toward the floor and did not appear to be struck. He hid momentarily before running out of the building. None of the perpetrators managed to return fire. The police believe that the third man took a firearm with him, and, as I mentioned, one was found next to Tahir. So, in total, the perpetrators had 2 firearms. The police believed that even though Jason had been victimized by armed robbers, his actions did not qualify as self-defense. Jason Steiner was arrested and charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of attempted murder, and 3 counts of unlawful use of a weapon. In June 2025, the police were finally able to identify the third perpetrator as a 21-year-old man named Jalen Hudson. He was shot to death on July 20, 2025 on North Newman Avenue in Portland. It appears as though that case has not been solved. Jason Steiner went to trial in the fall of 2025. The state argued that Jason should have retreated instead of attacking the armed robbers. Jason's defense argued that he was in imminent danger the entire time. He was not safe just because he was outside the store. On October 10, 2025, Jason Steiner was found not guilty of all charges. Now moving to my analysis. Jason Steiner maintains his innocence, and, as I mentioned, he was found not guilty. His supporters argued that Jason never should have been tried in the first place. He was clearly acting in self-defense. The 3 perpetrators brought the situation on themselves. They were the ones who threatened Jason's life. They were the aggressors. They knew they were committing felonies, and they knew they could be killed as a result. Being an armed robber is a dangerous business. The state, of course, disagrees. They maintain that Jason could have easily made it to safety. There was no reason to re-engage with the armed robbers. This brings me to the question, was Jason guilty of murder, or did the jury make the right decision when they found him not guilty? Let's take a look at the evidence both for and against the idea that he was guilty, starting with the inculpatory factors. Jason was on probation at the time of the killings for the 2021 incident involving him ramming a truck with his truck. His behavior at that time was consistent with having an anger problem. There is no question that Jason was the victim of a violent crime on the night of the killings in October 2024, but when he exited the store, one could argue he was no longer in imminent danger. The sidewalk next to North St. Louis Avenue is about 40 feet from the door of the marijuana dispensary. Furthermore, the store was surrounded by houses, trees, and bushes, giving Jason many places to hide. Jason said that he waited by the door for the perpetrators to exit, but the video surveillance indicated that he went directly to the drive-up window. After arriving there, he fired at the men, even though their backs were turned toward him and their weapons were not drawn. Moving to the exculpatory factors, when the 3 perpetrators robbed the marijuana dispensary where Jason worked, they threatened him with firearms. Any reasonable person in Jason's position would have been extremely fearful for their life. Jason managed to exit the store, which seemed like a lucky break, but claimed that one of the men said, "What does he have on him?" This makes it seem like the perpetrator had taken note that Jason grabbed something before he left the store. Perhaps the man wondered if that bag had cash in it. It is reasonable to believe that the perpetrators may have found Jason after they exited and inquired about that bag. Even if the bag was not an issue, there was no guarantee the robbers were going to change their minds about letting Jason go. Maybe he took them by surprise when he simply exited the store. They didn't expect anyone to do that. Later, when it dawned on them what happened, they could have thought to themselves, "We need to go get this guy." Jason may have been about 40 feet away, but the perpetrators could have easily closed that distance. Jason was not only overweight, but he had asthma. He was by no means in a safe position, as the state argued. The type of extreme fear the perpetrators caused in Jason would not dissipate after a few seconds. When Jason fired his weapon, he was probably still feeling the intense effects of this fear. He never had a chance to calm down and rationally assess the situation. This was still a kill-or-be-killed scenario from his perspective. The state kept talking about how Jason should have retreated, he should have run into a neighboring house, hidden behind bushes, or disappeared into a tree-lined street. Even though Oregon does not have a stand your ground law, a person has no duty to retreat when they are in imminent danger. Nothing obligated Jason to move farther away from the store or to hide. In the state of Oregon, a person has the right to defend their business from armed robbery. Jason was in charge of the store. He had the right to prevent the perpetrators from conducting the robbery. When considering all the evidence in this case, do I believe that Jason Steiner was guilty? No. In my opinion, he was not guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. The jury made the right decision when they acquitted him of the charges. When Jason fired his weapon, the situation was still fluid. The perpetrators were continuing to place him in imminent danger. The state argued that Jason had a duty to retreat, but he did not. They argued that his right to defend himself expired when he exited the building, but he wasn't far enough away to have guaranteed his safety. I don't think what Jason did was wise. It would have made more sense to escape. He should have just kept moving away from the store. Even so, his actions were not criminal. What do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. The three perpetrators, King, Tahir, and Jalen, were self-centered, impulsive, irresponsible, reckless, violent, aggressive, and had a sense of entitlement. During the robbery, Jason took them by surprise when he simply walked out of the store. They didn't know what to make of that, but they were so focused on stealing marijuana, it didn't really matter to them. Jason had strong feelings as a result of the robbery. For example, he may have been upset, confused, frightened, or angry. He retrieved his weapon and fired at the perpetrators when they were distracted with their theft activity. It probably never occurred to Jason that he would be charged with first-degree murder. The men were literally in the process of robbing the store when he shot them. From Jason's point of view, they were still a threat. Prosecutors unwisely decided to charge Jason, perhaps as part of a mission to protect the perpetrators of violent crime. They wanted to send a message that armed robbers would be dealt with compassionately in the state of Oregon. The jury rightly rejected the state's ridiculous argument and acquitted Jason of all charges. Now moving to my final thoughts. In addition to the state of Oregon, there have been quite a few people who vigorously advocated for the two criminals who were killed in this case. They argue that armed citizens create an environment where criminals can't even rob a store without risking their lives. This somehow seems unfair to them, like the perpetrators should be guaranteed safety while committing violent felonies. One idea behind this argument is that the offenders in this case, the two who were killed and the one who was killed later, were getting ready to turn their lives around. Their supporters would have people believe that as these guys were stuffing bags full of marijuana during the robbery, they were contemplating the philosophical concepts of remorse, rehabilitation, and redemption. They could have been having thoughts like, we should not be doing this anymore. These armed robberies are terribly insensitive. We are damaging the community by stealing. We feel really badly about the store clerk we just victimized. And it's time that we put down our weapons and surrender to the police. If Jason had not shot them, they probably would have walked out of the store with their hands up and completely changed their lives. Undoubtedly, the Nobel Peace Prize would have been on the way in just a few years. There is a very limited amount of evidence supporting this point of view. For example, when Tahir Burley graduated from high school about a year before he robbed the store, he said, quote, "We are all a flower just waiting to be watered and blossom into the sunlight to be something amazing," unquote. The idea that these offenders are one step away from redemption is one point of view, but I would argue that they were just getting started with their criminal careers. Maybe the water that Tahir received so he could blossom into something amazing was contaminated. When Jason killed him and his conspirator King, he probably prevented innocent people from being hurt or killed in the future. Even so, it is worth noting that Jason acted unwisely. He should have let the police handle the situation. It is possible that the young offenders could have turned their lives around. If the state of Oregon is serious about promoting the goal of redemption, they should examine what led the offenders to commit the crimes instead of prosecuting the victims. Those are my thoughts in the case of Jason Steiner. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Just a reminder that I have over 300 pre-release videos on my Patreon account. These videos are of the same quality as the videos I release to the public. When I put a video in pre-release status, it usually stays that way for several months, if not a year. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video.